Hi everyone, welcome to the Laser channel. My name is Greg and this video topic is going to be all about setting up a rotary unit with a fiber laser machine. After the rotary unit is connected and configured into the machine using LightBurn software, I'm going to be doing some test engraving on this small copper pipe just to make sure that the graphics and the orientation is correct. After that, I'm going to follow up with a little mini project. I have a client that would like this coated stainless steel tumbler engraved. Now, this is not a color that I would normally pick, but the client wanted the pinkest pink that I could find, and I definitely think that I nailed it. Before I head over to the laser machine with the rotary unit, there's going to be several materials that I'll be using throughout this video, and I'd like to briefly cover those right now. To start out with, I'm going to use a long metal rod. It can be any material. The main thing is it just needs to be perfectly flat. Next up, we're going to have some measuring, so a steel ruler or more preferably a dial caliper. And lastly, some type of a level. I have a torpedo level, that works good, or I prefer to use one of these small keychain levels, and they work perfect for projects just like this. With all the materials covered, let's head over to the laser machine. One important thing to note is when I ordered my machine from Cloudray, I did talk to Cloudray on what I'm going to be doing with my fiber laser and the accessories that I'd like to use with it, including this rotary. And they made sure that all of the components that are needed inside of the main case are already present to support specifically this type of a rotary unit. Not all the motors are the same on rotary units, and it's a good idea before ordering a rotary unit to talk to your manufacturer and the supplier of the rotary unit to make sure that both components are going to work correctly. The rotary is not bolted down to the work surface and the power cable to the motor is not plugged in. The very first thing that I want to do is take this metal rod and install that in the chuck. Once I have that in there, I want to just spin the chuck with my hand, and I'm looking at the very tip of the rod to make sure that it is perfectly straight. Now, what I'm doing with this metal rod is when we go into the LightBurn software, I'm going to draw a line, and then I'm going to frame that line out so that the laser head draws that red beam, and we need to use that red line to align the rotary unit up to the laser head. And that is because all of these holes on this plate down here, when I have this bolted down, I might not be directly in the center line. And when I'm in the software placing my graphics, I want to make sure that I'm placing my graphics on the center line of the chuck. With this all set, I can remove this long power cable from the motor, and I can plug that into the back of the machine. Inside LightBurn, I'm now ready to turn power on my machine. And the first thing that I'm going to see in LightBurn is in this area here, I do not see a spot to activate the rotary unit. I'm going to navigate over to Edit, Settings, and there's a little checkbox here, Show Rotary Enable on Main Window, excuse me. When I click OK, now that shows up. I can enable that now. Navigating to the top of the screen is the rotary setup button here. When I click on that once, it brings up this submenu. Starting at the top of the screen, I'll go through all the stuff on the screen here that's relevant for us in this video. The rotary type is a chuck type, of course. I have the rotary enabled. Right now, I do not have reverse the rotary direction. And I have it set up to return to the start point. This is great if you're doing a high production volume of lots of tumblers or engravings for industrial processes. I'm going to skip over split setup and head over to rotary settings. The first line here is steps per rotation, and that is referring to steps per rotation for this specific motor on this rotary unit. I found out what my step count was by referencing the manual that came with my Cloudray machine. Essentially, this phrase here, steps per rotation, is what they're talking about, steps per rotation. They mean the same thing. And they state that that number is usually 12,800 or 25,600. In my case, it happened to be 12,800, and that is what I typed in here. The next line is the object diameter, and I have a setting in there right now of 0.875 inches, and that's the diameter of this test pipe that I have. I used my dial calipers, and that's exactly what I measured. And we'll need to enter this number in every time we change the object diameter. It will automatically calculate the circumference. We don't need to do anything with that at all. Moving on to motor speed settings, all of these numbers were defaulted by LightBurn. I didn't adjust any of these numbers at all. Now that I've covered all of this, we'll go over to rotary axis, and this has to do with what direction we're having the rotary axis of this unit facing, and I have it facing for the y-axis. If I had this unit turned towards us, facing in either direction, that would be the x-axis. But for me, I prefer to have it set up on this axis. Split setup. This is something that I set up once, and I've been able to leave that setting the same regardless of the diameter of the work material that I have chucked up in the rotary attachment. And for that, I'm going to use this prop. I have a piece of white paper wrapped around a spray paint can. And for the laser, I've got this black marker is going to simulate the laser. Now, currently in the LightBurn software, I have a split size of something like 0.01 millimeters. And that 0.01 millimeters is essentially what distance it's going to engrave stuff across the face before it stops laser engraving, and it tells the rotary unit to index forward. The laser is then going to laser engrave a little bit more, stop, and then the rotary unit's going to index some more. And it's going to keep doing this. Now, one of the things that can happen if you have the numbers really far off in here, and you might want to play with them depending on your setup, is that you can engrave, and if it indexes too far, it will leave a gap in there. And when it indexes again, you'll have all of these little gaps in there. And conversely, if you've got a setting in there too far off, you'll engrave, it'll index forward, and it will overlap too much before indexing onto the next one. So something that was supposed to be, say, this distance here got shrunk down to something much, much smaller. So if you're drawing an oval or a circle in a perfect setup, you'd have that perfect circle. If you have this split size setup incorrect, you might end up with an oval that's scrunched down or one that is segmented and really stretched out. Hopefully that makes sense for you. It's something that hopefully you can plug in the numbers that I'm using and they're going to work perfectly for you. I have everything in the setup here. Looks good. I'm going to hit OK. I have the setup complete in LightBurn software, and it's now time to align the rotary unit up to the laser head and get everything bolted down. And in LightBurn, I'm going to draw a line on this axis. I'm ready to hit the frame button, and I have this line down here. I'll use this yellow post-it so it shows up better. I've got that line dancing across, and I use that line so that I can just push my rotary unit around on the table until it's somewhat close to where it needs to be. And what I'm doing is picking a spot where I have this framed out line on this metal shaft in the chuck, and then I'm also looking down on this work surface at the mounting pad here, and I'm going to find the closest spot where I have a couple of mounting holes to firmly attach the rotary unit down to this work base. I don't have the bolts fully tightened down. I still want to be able to pivot this rotary unit, and I'm going to use that post-it note again, and I can see that I need to move this red line up a little bit higher. So to do that, I'm going to press and hold the control key and hit the up key, and that's going to move that dancing red line up in 1 millimeter increments. Now it's just a matter of pivoting the rotary attachment so that it's perfectly in line on this shaft, and I went a little bit too far, so I have that set up. I'm exactly hitting the center of the shaft. This all looks good. I can turn off the framing tool, and when I zoom in LightBurn, we can see that that line that we drew that was exactly on this dash crosshair for the center of the work area, that has moved up just a little bit. Now I'm going to highlight that line again, and I'm going to put that on a tool layer. That way we don't mark or engrave that when we go to do the project. And this line is our new center line. It's no longer this dashed line down here. It will be the orange line. I'm all done with this metal rod, and I can remove that from the chuck and place that off to the side, and I'm ready to place in this test copper piece that I have. And I'm going to check the focus here on my machine, and that looks good. And the first thing that I can do is I'm just going to type in 1, 2, 3. And let me change that font style to, how about this one? A little bit more of a brick pattern. And now I'm going to move this up here, and now I've got that 1, 2, 3 is on the center line of what we just moved the rotary unit to. I'm going to put that on this layer. I have the set to fill. I've got a speed of 800 millimeters per second, maximum power of 65%. Let me turn that up to 80%. Frequency is down at 50%. My line interval I'm going to set at 0.01 millimeters. If I double click on that fill layer, I don't need the crosshatch on, and I'm going to put the scan angle at 0. We always want to do the engraving scanning in line with the object. This all looks good. And this is an open frame machine, so I will have my safety glasses on. And I'm ready to hit the frame button. And I can see that I'm engraving in a nice spot. And for those of you concerned if I'm hitting this area over here where there's solder, this is silver solder for water pipes that does not contain any lead in it. When I hit the frame button, this sub window comes up. We're used to seeing this. But with the fiber machine, I get this green bar across the bottom, and this is a reminder that the rotary is enabled, and I manually entered in this diameter of 0.875 inches, and it also tells me the step count of the motor that, again, I told the software what to use. This all looks good, and I'm ready to hit the start button. And that brings up this other menu, and when I hit this start button, it will start the engraving. That didn't take very long at all. I'll remove this from the chuck and we will take a closer look. Here's a close-up of that test engraving. Everything looks good. It came out in the correct orientation. I don't need to mirror the output. And the height of this looks good. The engraving didn't overlap where it scrunched down the numbers. And there's also not lines of gaps in between, so everything looked good. Before I place the cup into the chuck, I want to take a measurement of the diameter of the cup. And I don't want to measure up at the very top of the cup because I can see that this cup has a slight taper to it. I want to measure the diameter of where I'm going to be doing the engraving. Now that I've got that measurement, I can place the cup into the chuck and secure it in place. At this time, I'm also going to check the level of the cup in the area that I'm going to be doing the engraving, and I can see that I'm way out of level. So I'm going to make the adjustments to the rotary. It does pivot off of this point back here. And that looks perfect. With the level set, I'm now ready to set the focus, or more accurately, the defocus. When engraving these stainless steel tumblers that are coated, I find that if I set the focus of the laser head, I'll do that right now. I've got 3 dots converging into one. I'm in perfect focus right now. If I run the profile or the program right now, I stand a good chance that I'll burn all the way through this pink powder coating, but I may also start to mark and discolor the stainless steel underneath. And it's really hard to find that threshold of getting through the coating of the cup, but not marking the stainless steel underneath. And to do this, I defocus the laser by 5 millimeters. I'm going to move the laser up 5 millimeters. This is going to provide this range where I can easily remove the powder coating, but not touch the stainless steel underneath. In LightBurn, I have the client's graphic loaded in with their motivational quote on there. I'm going to select everything and put it on one layer. And again, I'm going to have that set up with the following. The line interval is still at 0.01. I'm going to have the speed set up at 800 millimeters per second, the frequency at 50 hertz. The power I'm going to also have at 50%. Before I frame this out, I want to enter in this new diameter, and I have a diameter of 3.324. I'm going to rotate this graphic so it faces the top of the graphic is the top of the cut. I'm ready to hit the frame. I like the way that that looks, and this too all looks good, and I'm ready to hit the start. And I've got some other settings. I'd like to go back over that one more time. So I'm going to change the speed from 800 to 650. I'm going to change the power level up to 80% and the frequency to 80% as well. Excuse me, 80 kilohertz. I'm going to change my line interval to 0.02. That looks good. I'm going to go into my rotary setup and I'm going to set the line interval to 0.21. This is all complete and it's ready to remove from the machine. The only thing that I need to do is just a quick wipe with some denatured alcohol to remove any of that powder coating residue, and this is ready for the client. Here's a nice close-up again of all the nice clean detail. Again, I got down to the stainless steel without discoloring the stainless steel underneath that powder coating. This cup turned out perfect. The speed was amazing. The detail is phenomenal with the fiber laser machine. I enjoy making these videos for you. I hope that you got something out of the setup and the settings in the LightBurn software. I'd appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, or ring that notification bell. Doing any number of those things, it really helps me out. It helps the channel out, and it's a great way to connect content like this with viewers like you. Until next time, learn, create, and share.